because the lollipop control arm is in direct interference with that tube. Okay, so how are we going to get this thing to fit? And the answer is, I don't know yet. I really think that banging up the passenger firewell, the footwell right here, is probably going to end up happening, and it's going to snake around and above and kind of maybe stop like right there. So I'm going to have both of them there. I don't want to cut this and remove it. It's in a fine position. It may actually come up from underneath and come up here and come down like right here. I just don't know because the more cutting and modification that I do, the more work it is for me, and the less plug and play it is for you. So that's important for me to ensure that I'm doing the minimum amount of cuts and welding necessary in order to get this thing to fit. So it's either go this side of the first pipe or this side of the pipe, and I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but I do want to get this car a little bit higher so I can get more comfortable as I start to cut and weld this end right here with this guy and try to reuse as much as I possibly can. Okay, now it's time to work on the exhaust downpipe. Now I got half of it done. It's actually didn't even have to do anything. It just did it. Yeah, so the cylinders 1 through 3 was the easy one. That basically didn't need any modifications. But the cylinders 4 through 6 actually has an interference with the lollipop on the passenger side control arm, and we need to cut it. Well, I already cut it, but I need to route it around and probably bang back the passenger footwell just a little bit to get the axis that I need, and then weld it back up. So, having said that, I got myself a couple of 3-inch 90-degree tubes, and I'm gonna probably have to cut or shave this in some way, shape, or form, but I wanted to get this to curve around where I need to get out of those obstacles, and then get it through and get accessibility with the stock piece that I had already cut off from the existing VRSF downpipe. So what we need to do is basically reroute half of the exhaust. So let's do that right now. All right, looking underneath the car, you can see that the pipe for cylinders 4, 5, and 6 is right here. I already cut it off. Here's the other piece of it, right? And essentially it goes this way, which is right into the lollipop, and obviously that can't move. All this on the control arm is set in its state, so there's no getting around it. However, if you look up through here, there is a pass-through that goes up, and then again, as it comes back down right here, right in this area. So that's the location I want to exploit, and the only way around getting to that is to bang back the passenger footwell. So I'm gonna have to do that, and that'll get me the location that I can afford in order to get this pipe basically smoothed around and through and then in. So I'm gonna try to bang this back like I've done on almost every single swap that I've ever done, and get this thing placed. What I decided to do was, since banging back the footwell bought me just a tiny bit of room, I realized that this downpipe here is literally in the middle of where I'd want it to be. I can't put anything to one side, I can't put anything to the other side. It's not enough room, I can't get enough clearance to go above it. So I'm just going to cut it here, and I'm just gonna rebuild both of these guys exactly the way that I need to be, so that both are basically fitting. One's here and then one's right there. I think it'll make it a lot easier. So I'm just gonna cut this guy and move from there. So I actually had to cut it off one more time because I wasn't happy with how long this was extended. Now, since I'm going with a completely custom exhaust anyway, I don't really mind modifying these VRSF headers. but I'm actually taking them off and I switched them to the other side. And it's gonna look a little hokey at first, but I gotta hone in on it. This actually looks like a pretty good location. So I'm gonna have to tack that guy in, and then I wanna see how this guy fits, which by the way has not been modified at all, I just cut it. So it's gonna look a little weird, I think. Something like that. A little bit like that. It's gonna look weird. So I gotta fix this, right? I gotta make sure that I get this thing. I gotta start off with one. Now that I have the room that I know I need, I can actually start with one, get it tacked in, and then make the other one the custom that works around it. I think that this is gonna be the place that I'm gonna let this thing sit, and then the exhaust is gonna come up. It's gonna basically come up and then down again. I'm gonna basically bring this up a little bit, and this guy is gonna probably come almost straight out, I think, is what I'm gonna do. This is gonna be a lot easier, just straight out, done. So, gotta mind you, gotta make room for the oxygen sensors on the downside, on the downpipes, and then we should be in pretty good shape from there. So start off with one, then weld the other to clear both. Okay, so there's one more aspect that you need to consider when you're putting these downpipes on, and that is the location of the downstream oxygen sensor. Now remember, you're gonna end up clocking these things however you clock them, but you need to make sure that you can install and remove the oxygen sensors on the downstream easily, because if you can't get to them, you can't get a wrench in there, or there's not enough clearance for the actual oxygen sensor to install, then you're not gonna be able to even service this thing. So let's get I got it mocked up to the best of my ability, and I wanna tack that one header in place with the oxygen sensor installed just to make sure that I can remove it and install it easily and get a wrench back there. All right, so 1 through 3 is tacked in place, and the height is not so bad. It's actually not lower than the oil pan, which is obviously preferred. But these headers were designed like this from BRSF. They were designed to bolt on to the turbos, onto the engine, and the placement of the headers as low as they are is not something I can control. I mean, I can cut it continually more, but this is the way it was designed. So I'm not really concerned about, you know, the depth of the headers compared to the oil pan, because it's not lower than the oil pan. It's very close, but it's not lower. And I'm just going to leave it and continue to branch off from there as I can. Now, I do have cylinders 1 through 3 installed, just as you saw earlier, and it actually looks pretty good. Let me zoom in from here. And you can see that the oxygen sensor placement is right on the top up here. And the mouth or the throat of the header to the rest of the exhaust is right here, which is gonna make excellent placement for it to go right through across. This guy here is gonna end up coming down and probably right around down inside of here. Again, it's gonna be just at this stage here because I want to be able to remove and install the transmission relatively easily, so I don't want these headers to go too far, or else I'm going to have to remove the headers whenever I remove the transmission for whatever reason. So I want to try to get this flange to be right at the face of the transmission if I can, so that I can easily remove and install the actual rest of the exhaust without having to worry about missing or lack of bolts. So the oxygen sensor on this header is good. You can see it right here, right? You can kind of turn it. So it is serviceable. And now I need to work on the other one as well. Now just mind you, I could have very easily used the bung just like this and installed the bung wherever I wanted. So I decided to make as least work as possible for myself, and I didn't feel like having to cut and weld a new bung, especially in the thick walled headers, because those headers are actually really good quality. I got to tell you, the stainless steel is chewing through my Sawzall blades, so it's really good quality stuff. So yeah, you're getting what you pay for with the VRS headers. It's good stuff. So now for cylinders 4, 5, and 6, I think I've got it placed where I want it so that I can easily remove the transmission if I have to without having to remove the headers, because it's going to be impossible to remove the headers. Anyway, I have to relocate the oxygen sensor on this one. There's no way around it. So I've drawn the new oxygen sensor location right here. I have to fill this guy in, and I have to drill a new one here and then weld the bung onto that. So I need to do that now, just so I know that I have the right clearances. And then I've marked my location where I want to tack it on to the actual pipe, the rest of the downpipe on the car. So I've kind of like marked it, and basically you just line up the hash marks with the other hash marks, and then you just tack. So this should be a relatively easy exercise to get the second exhaust header in. So now this guy's all welded up. What I had to do was grind out the top because I really put this bung pretty flush down into the center, as low as I can go, so I have the high clearance that I need so that I don't have any interference when I'm trying to install or remove oxygen sensors while it's on the car. So as a result, I needed to grind down the top of the welds, and I needed to square it off with a file. So I did that, and everything seems to be installed correctly and flush, and this is really nice into the path of the exhaust. And I welded up the existing bung location, and I have my 2 hash marks, so I'm ready to install, mock this up, and weld it up. All right, let's take a look at the damage. Not bad, not bad. Looks like the oxygen sensor location is pretty good. The location of both of these guys is actually pretty good as well. This guy's gonna come around and go that way. This one here is going to, I'm actually gonna remove this little nub on the block. It really just does get in the way and it doesn't add any value. So that's gonna allow me to put a pipe right here and go up and over parallel to that. Whether or not I do a Y here into a single pipe or if I go true dual all the way back, that's something I need to discuss with my customer. But as it stands right now, I have no interference between the block, the subframe, the control arm, the lollipop, and now I know that I can remove the transmission relatively easily when I want to. So this is a really good setup, I think. I don't know if I want to weld studs on here, so that it makes it really easy to remove and install the exhaust, line it up for me, so to speak. Or if I want to just do through bolts and put nuts on the back, that might actually be the easier way to go about it. That way I don't have to worry about lining up studs and trying to figure out how to get that with multiple dimensions. But everything's tacked in. This is basically done, guys. We are good with the headers for now, and I can start moving on to the next thing. Let's talk about that. Okay, now that the exhaust headers are done and the downpipes are basically set in its position, we gotta work on the next big thing while we have this thing installed in the engine. Before we take everything out and do preventative maintenance on the N54, we gotta take a look at routing of tubings and hoses and things like that. We gotta get our radiator installed. We gotta route our cooling tubes to the heater core, to the radiator, to the engine, to the cooling pump, all that stuff. Let's do that right now.